Okay, so tonight we're going to learn how to use the SLA resin printers, the Formlab printers, as well as get a sense for the dedicated software, which is PreForm, the slicer program for specifically Formlab printers, even although the newest update is a bit more open source, but we're not going to deal with that because this is an older model. Anyhow, all right, first things first, you got to get your model ready to print. So let's hop over to Fusion and get our ring going. So this is the model we're working with our with our ring pop going here. Now, first off, to print these, it needs to be a singular joined body. So that means that if you have it in multiple parts, multiple bodies, that's great for the model, for the assignment itself, but not for what we need to do. What you need to do, go to Combine, join all the parts together. If you want to keep them all separate for your own, like posterity, or just you want to keep tweaking, stuff like that, that's fine. What you want to do is you want to select both checkboxes here, new component. That means the combined finished product will be kicked out into its own component, but also select keep tools. That will keep the originals original, and then you'll be able to kick them out later. So you say that, it'll save, it'll kick it out to a new model. You can close all the other ones, hide all the things, and now you'll be left with just this one singular thing. And of course, the appearance has changed and taken on like the first object, so whatever. All right, switch to auto color, shift in, you're all set. Whatever. This is a singular body, so it can print solid. Now, that's one of the things with the slicer program, with the resin printers, they print solid. But we currently have, depending on what resin you're using, we currently have clear, so it'll look kind of like, so it'll look all jewel-like. All right, so you have to get your object out. Now, again, Fusion has recently updated to where it actually has built-in slicer software, but I want to use just the dedicated Formlabs PreForm software so you specifically see what we're working with here. So select the body, go over, you can go to 3D print, which technically, no, don't need manufacturing. You technically can choose the print utility, which actually does in fact use PreForm, but we're going to skip over that because I just want to show you how to use the all-around way. It's a little more universal. So make sure you're just selecting export. That's it. Which technically, yeah, you could have just selected export, same diff. But anyhow, we're going just to export. The default setting is 3MF. Like I said before, like we talked about before, that is the newer, more universal object file type for more 3D printer models and such. The standard that we usually use is STL. That's the basic one. That'll work for this as well. But if you want to be all modern, hey, 3MF. Cool. You can select a preview thing. That just gives you a preview of the mesh that it translates to. Doesn't really matter in this case, but way you, or as you like. Hit OK. Make sure that it's isn't viewable in Fusion Team. Yeah, that's okay. Save it wherever you're going to save it, onto your computer. In this case, it's in the downloads. Save. Away we go. All right. So next step is you need to make sure you have software. So in this, just like the Prusa Slicer, Formlabs has its own dedicated software. Formlabs.com, go straight to software. It'll bring it up if you're using Mac, Apple, or Microsoft Windows, obviously whichever. And there you go. Download and install. You can, of course, also just use, if you're in the classroom, just use the desktops. They already have this software installed on them. You don't necessarily need to have it on your program or on your computer, because you actually send the software, or you actually send the print to the printer through the software. So unlike the other unlike the filament printers or Prusas, where you load it onto a dedicated SD card and you take that to the physical printer, this you actually need to have connected to a computer. So you could, if you want, load it onto your own laptop, unplug the printer from the desktop, plug it into yours, upload it directly. Now there is network link for it, but that is not set up on these printers, so it's hardline only. All right, let's hop over to PreForm, and I'll show you the workspace. So this is the general workspace. Now, a couple of things. You'll bring in your model, file new, bring something in. This has nothing in it already. So you will bring in a new model, open an object. In this case, where did it go? Oh, yeah, example ring. I forgot that it was labeled example. I was looking for ring. Hit OK, and it'll bring it in. All right. Now you're going to see some color variations and stuff like that. Also, I definitely made this larger when I modeled it, so don't worry about that. Also, a couple things. One, the virtual environment is 1-to-1 relative to the print volume on these resin printers. First thing you'll note, that looks enormous. It is a little bit larger, but mainly the print volume is much smaller on the resin printers. The print volume capabilities on the filament printers, much larger. So you have much higher fidelity with resin printers, but much smaller objects can only be printed. All right, so it's going to default give you some estimates and stuff. Ignore that for now because we haven't put all the details in yet. Now, if you are physically connected to that printer, it will automatically detect what printer you have. This computer is not currently connected to one of the printers nor networked, so I'm going to put it in manually. By default, you will be selecting what printer you're using. So select up in the upper right-hand corner here. I just click the whole thing. It is using a Form2 printer. There's going to be a whole bunch of different options. Yes, it says, oh, I thought we had a number 1. Yes, it's a Fuse one. That's a whole different type of printer. Form2 is the type of printer we're using. Like I said, it will automatically detect when it's connected. Also, you will not have to select your material. This is just, for example, because it's giving me all the options because it's not actually connected. The current printer resin is a clear resin. So we'll select that. Oops. Then below, you have 3 options for thickness. This is how quality the print is. And it'll show you the relative. 0.1 millimeter is fastest, 0.05 is medium, 0.025 is the finest. If you want, the finest I would go with is 0.05. Now, just as relative terms, or just to give you an idea, remember our rough setting on the filament printers was 0.3. So the layer heights, way finer on these resin printers. That automatically gives you a good sense. And ultimately, yeah, you'd be selecting some default stuff like that. But again, if you are physically connected to the printer, all of this stuff is going to set up for you. The only thing you have to select is what your quality is, layer height, thickness, all that such. And you just hit apply, bottom right-hand corner. All right. So now we got our model. Let's look around at what else we got here. Now, when you first install this, it's going to give you a walkthrough for the whole thing. So you can obviously just follow the install wizard and away you go. So right now, all this red and everything, that is showing it can't be printed like that. Now, a couple quick things about resin printers. Technically, yes, you can print directly on the print bed, but it is rarely recommended. And in fact, it's really not a good idea in general. Unlike the filament printers, which print basically flat on, as in like, all right, it would make sense that this jewel here, we would probably orient it to where this flat facet up here would be smack on the print bed. That works perfectly fine for the filament printers. But for this, that is not the way you want to go. Also, this is a little deceiving because it is showing you print bed, rings will be oriented just like that. If you look over at the resin printers, and of course you can't see it online, if you look over there, it's upside down. So it actually prints by moving the entire print bed down into that vat of liquid resin because gravity dunks it in and it prints layer by layer and the print comes up out of it. So it's always dripping, all that kind of fun. So a lot of goopy drippiness. But what that also means is so you have to have support. You do not have the benefit of working with gravity. You are actually printing against gravity specifically. Which is why it's super neat with the whole research on 3D printing in space. Anyway, all right, what does all that mean? So technically, if you got everything all set, you know what you're doing, you can just go with one click printing, and it's going to kick all the things out. So what I mean by that is it's going to set up, it's going to orient it how it should be best set. It's going to build supports as it should be best set, and it's going to lay things out, especially if you have like multiple objects. We're going to go through the steps we're going to go through the steps instead. All right. So first things first is we can orient the object. Select what you got going, or when you click that, you can go to auto orient, and of course, or as beneficially, it has little pop-ups as you mouse over stuff. It shows you what you got working. You can again scale this up or down. So like we talked about before, if you end up accidentally make something teeny tiny, you can scale it up or vice versa. I would honestly just go with auto orient on all, or auto set on all of these, because it's going to find the best orientation. It's not always going to find the same one each time, but it's going to find the best way possible. Orient all. All right, so it just changed my ring hanging to the side there. Okay. Next step down, supports. You have to have supports for this. It cannot print this just hanging in space. Auto all. Excuse me. All right, cool. We've just made a little roller coaster tycoon thing here. So you got a couple of options. The only ones you really want to mess with right now is you have the option of raft type. This is a raft. It makes this little cup here. And this one, it helps bond the whole print to the print bed. And that's really important for all your scaffolding. Otherwise, you're just making teeny tiny little spots. So what that means is full raft is that. Mini raft, or mini rafts, show you the difference if it prints it, just makes you these teeny tiny little things. Honestly, especially for an object like this, just go full raft. If you have something larger and you're worried about using your own resin, obviously, yeah, go the mini route. But for this, I would highly recommend keeping it full raft. Plus, it makes it a lot easier to handle the thing after we've printed it. All right, super good. That's It names it for you. So if you had like several different models, oh joy, I can figure out what I have because that's Jewel. Hooray. I don't know if it does Braille. Layout would simply be if you had multiples. So if I had copy, paste, 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 laying out everything, it would find the best situation. But I don't need to print all of those. There we go. But I'll leave it there just as an example for now. Now, I'll be honest, these newer options, it can print hollow objects. This is very new, and I'm honestly have not gotten the chance to play with this. So if you want to experiment, have at you. Let's see what happens. Hollow selected. It's going to make this void inside. So the main thing with this is it would be super helpful if you're printing a larger object that you want to have or a fully solid object, but you want to like save some material. So it's not just a giant brick of resin. Print hollow. Honestly, this is super helpful. This is brand new. I don't know how it would react with this. So I'll set it up. We can try these out later, but I've never tested that before. So there we go. You can also hit hollow all, and that'll do it to every one of them. You can see how that goes. Neato burrito. All right. So that's how that works. But let's go ahead and delete some of these because we don't need all those. All right. Layout. Sure, it's going to slap it right in the middle. Cool. All right. So that's pretty much where we're going with this. You can, of course, reduce the amount of support, stuff like that, but that's not always a good idea. From there, now you're actually going to have some better estimates for your actual print times. All right. How long is it going to take to print? 3.5 hours. That is ridiculous. But it's because it's much higher detail. We can change those sometimes by going back over. All right, let's change the print. Let's go to fastest, see what changes. Yep, import all the changes. All right, that dropped it by an hour and 15 minutes. So still 2 hours and 15 minutes, but there we go. Curious what happens if we remove the hollowing effect and no change. All right, cool. So same diff. I guess the benefit is you just get a hollowed object. But one of the things is the way these print, Sometimes there's not really a big difference between printing one and printing multiples. So just as comparison, I'm curious. Copy, paste, paste, paste. We'll go to lay these out again. So to print one, 2.5 hours. To print four, 3 hours. Ultimately, it's just the layer height, and because there's so much detail that these can capture, it just has to go through the steps. Now, again, this is an older model. Newer ones can print way faster. But just to show you the comparison, printing multiples, not a big, it doesn't take that much longer to print several versus one. But anyway, that's how that goes. All right. I'll slap that back again. Okay, cool. That's pretty much it. Now, if this was physically connected, I could then go straight to print. And in the bottom right-hand corner, you would have the option here to print, add it to print queue. I cannot do that because it is not physically connected, and there's no printer for this to upload to. But that's pretty much the rundown for this. We will discuss the actual functionality in class, but essentially the detail is you have to be a lot cleaner with this resin printer. And when it's done printing, it's not actually done, because these print by, rather than heating up plastic and squirting it out, and then when it's cooled off, it's done. This exposes light sensitive resin to harden, but when it's done printing, it is not done curing. What you have to do is go through the post curing process. We don't have a light chamber, which is basically a tanning bed for a little print. It just exposes it to ultraviolet light. So what you do, you finish the print, rinse it off in the solvent tray. Do not leave that in there overnight. It will absolutely eat the print. Solvent is just denatured alcohol. It's not super aggressive. It's just enough to rinse off any excess resin. You wash that up, or you wash that off, blow it off, either blow it off just by lungs, or we have compressed air. Problem is with doing that, tiny object, really easy to try and dry it off, and then you end up losing grip and it fires it across the room. From there, yeah, just sit it in a windowsill for the day and you're all set. Now, I will also warn you, when you go to cut these off of your scaffolding, once these are hardened, all of these scaffolding are super brittle, which means when you clip them with a tiny pair of clippers, those parts do go flying. So one, don't do it in a carpeted place, because you will lose them until you're barefoot, and that's when you'll find those tiny sharp parts. Also, put glasses on. If you wear glasses, that's fine, but put on safety glasses, because they do go flying, and simply because why wouldn't they fly into your eyeballs? They will fly into your eyeballs. That just always happens. I've gotten popped in the eye enough times to then, oh, right, I was supposed to put these things that are on my head in front of my eyes. Standard stuff. So we will go through the process later, but that's the main rundown using the Formlabs PreForm slicer program. We'll go through it actually in class one-on-one, so that way everybody can see the actual process. So I'll close this out, but get your rings ready, whichever. If you want to print multiples, cool. You could even import, if you wanted to kind of save space, save time, you could group multiple people's projects into one print run. And as you saw, doesn't add a lot of time to add multiple rings and such. Or if you just want to make multiples, go for it too. All right, that's the rundown. That's how that works. Obviously, there's a bit more to it, but play around with it. The software is free also. And we'll get back, and I'll get back to you or one-on-one with actually printing it here in the room. All right.